Landis, the filmmaker. Um, we're going to start off a few questions, and we're hoping that you're going to type some questions in the box. And I think
I just want to preface this though with a
Go
little
ahead.
story.
Okay, Paula wants to preface with a little
I'm
story.
going to preface with a little story because, you know,
I don't know if Bob even remembers this.
Bob is a bit elusive, and he's also very shy. And I promise I won't embarrass you, Bob. But it was at the it was at the International Wolf Symposium a couple of years ago that Betsy and I literally cornered Bob in an elevator and begged for him to come to Wolf Week last year for the first time. And I know he was completely dumbfounded, like, what are these women doing? And then, not only that, then later, not much, it was only a week later, right, Bob, that we met in Yellowstone. And so Betsy and I actually flew from Minnesota, from the symposium, out to Yellowstone to meet some friends out there, and we met Timon and Steve out there to have a week of wolf watching. And it wasn't just a few days later that this is the first question coming for you, Bob. That he we were driving through, and our friends who live there, Wolves of the Rockies, actually, were driving us through the park, and it was about 4:30 in the morning, and the sun, the light was just starting to come up, and our friend goes, he goes. Mark goes, hey, look, there's Bob. Come on, I wanna come over and say hi. So we pull over, and we go over to say hi, and Bob, we're chatting to you, and you're standing there like this freezing, and I think you had a cup of coffee, and you had your camera out, and it was rolling, and you distinctly said, guys, be careful, don't walk in front of the camera, I'm doing a shot
A
for
time lapse.
a time lapse. And so what do we proceed to do? We literally walked right in front of this poor man's time lapse, which takes hours to shoot, right? And the look on your face was like, just like, oh.
You were
my
so
God.
nice, though.
You were so
kind.
nice. So the first question I have for you is, are you still mad at us?
No, in the time lapse, you can always cut out a few frames. So if you didn't stay too long in front of the camera, you were all right. But that is
So-
a problem.
we have a couple of questions from people. So I wanna ask you the first question, I think, which is probably the biggest question. You've been making wolf movies pretty much as far as I know, your entire career, and you suddenly made a coyote movie. And not suddenly, because I know this movie took a long while to make, but what made you decide to do a coyote movie?
Well, actually, for 25 years, that's what I did was coyote films. I started in 1970 in Yellowstone. Of course, there were no wolves then, but there was this animal that was very wolf-like, with the exception that it's not the killer that the wolf is of big game. But it had all the interesting features, the behavior. In fact, in many cases, it was even more interesting than the wolf as far as how it interacted with the other animals, such as ravens. But I satisfied my wolf desire to film by driving to Alaska for about 15 different summers and tried to do a wolf film, but it was just very difficult because it was only a summer and I couldn't do a life cycle. So I actually did my first film with National Geographic was a coyote film. They murdered the script called the Coyote Cane, for example, and I was very disappointed. And then when wolves came into the park, then suddenly there was a bigger dog out there and had all the excitement of a big predator.
Okay. And who was it who asked? Someone asked. I got a couple of questions here. We have Kathy Miller asked Bob, can you talk a little bit about the equipment that you use in the field?
I was going to ask you the same thing. How do you get those incredible shots?
Well, the equipment, of course, has changed over the years. And I started with 16 millimeter cameras and still lenses. But with the advent of video and HD, then it became a video camera. So presently I use a camera called a Sony F55, And there's a Canon zoom lens that's made for video. It has a range of 20 times, starting at 50 and going to 1,000. So in Yellowstone, you can never have a long enough lens in order to capture close-ups, but this is as long a lens as you can get. In a big fluid head tripod, and it's about 50 pounds of gear.
Wow.
Wow.
So how do you get those close-up shots? Are you literally that close, or closer?
In Yellowstone, we're pretty much restricted to being on the road for various reasons. We don't want to disturb the animals, and the animals apparently understand that we are not going to approach them, and so we let them come to the road, or hope that they come to the road, not let them. And then occasionally, if we have a pack that's fairly road tolerant, like the old Druids used to be, then they would come within 100 yards. They'd have a kill, perhaps, that they'd made at night, 100, 200 yards off the road. And that's close enough for me with that lens to get a close-up, get the wide shots, get the behavior.
So Denise Hughes would like to know what got you started in, what got you started in film?
Oh, well, I was fortunate to have a father that was very much interested in, first of all, hunting. He was actually quite a killer of ducks and big game, but he also liked to record his hunts with a 16mm magazine camera. So he started in the 30s filming ducks. And I came along in the 50s as a youngster, and he said, I'll give you a gun, I'm going to give you a camera, and you go shoot, and you decide which of those you want to use. And for a while, I used the gun, and I did shoot quite a few things. But I actually enjoyed filming more than shooting. And so that's how I got started. Very much as a rank amateur for years and years and years, always trying to influence, trying to talk to people at Geographic about doing a film. And finally, I was able to convince them in '93 to do that coyote film that I mentioned earlier.
I like that saying, shoot with a camera and not a gun.
Yeah.
You still have to follow them around and do the same thing. You don't have to kill them, right?
It's actually much more difficult with the camera because you have to get all the different size shots, and it's not just the instant of shooting. It's a continual process. In order to get a complete sequence, sometimes can take years because you have to fill in the missing parts. So, yeah, and you don't have the remorse of taking an animal's life.
Absolutely.
And then maybe they're there again for you to film again.
And you still have a trophy, and it's forever.
Yeah, not only for me to enjoy again, but for many people to enjoy again.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So we have a question from Gary Hoshiyama, and he says, "Hi Bob, Gary here from San Francisco, I believe. With your many years of filming inside the park, have you found that you've sighted more mountain lions to film as a result of an increase in that population? If so, have wolves and or coyotes attributed to that increase in any way, in your opinion or in your observations?"
Yeah, lions are very difficult because they're so wary of the road. It took me, I think, 30 years before I saw the first lion. And it was with Rick, and it was at Slough Creek. And this lion had just made a kill. So we were watching it, and I think it was the Slough Creek pack actually came along, chased the lion off of the carcass. So that was my first experience at actually seeing or filming a lion. So right now I average about one a year. I was lucky on the one that was in the film because the coyotes were barking, and I thought they were barking at a wolf. And when I looked up the hill, I could see there was a lion. The lion population has increased. I'm not sure why. They're doing research on that. It's, the elk numbers have gone down, so why have they increased? I'm not sure. I don't think it has anything to do with coyotes.
We have a question from Erica Kelly. She said, have you ever found it difficult to refrain from interfering with the animals you are filming?
I get that question asked a lot. I'm sure what they mean interfering mean in a predation sequence. But in most cases, the predation is occurring so far away that I couldn't physically break it up, so to speak, even if I wanted to. But on the other hand, that's what I get paid to do, is to film predation sequences, just like play sequences or anything else. It's all part of the natural habitat, the natural. This is what animals do. It's what wolves do. Kill, in other words.
Does it affect you emotionally?
Usually, I'm so wrapped up with the actual filming that no, not so much with that. Now we have a situation, and we show that in the coyote film with a bison going through the ice, and that takes, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
really hours before the animal dies, and that is very heartbreaking. The kills are usually very quick. I mean, within minutes, the animal's dead, and so it's not so. You don't even have time to think about the animal suffering.
So there's a follow-up part to that question. I guess she's saying, have you ever found it difficult to refrain from interfering? She said, and I guess you kind of answered that question, or if even a sick animal. If you see an animal that's sick, is it hard to? And I know that in the park, I mean, just going into that, I've talked to Doug and a lot of people. It's a national park. You're not supposed to interfere with animals' lives, unless it's something that a human has caused, like being hit by a car or something like that. I'm assuming you just don't interfere.
No,
right?
you don't interfere. I would actually lose my filming license permit if I did interfere. So not only wouldn't I do it, but legally I can't do it either.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the ethical code that, as well as being legal, that you take as a biologist or a filmmaker of nature. I mean, you are there to observe and observe only, and so, but it's got to still be really hard occasionally, like with that bison, to have to just talk yourself into realizing this is nature and this is how it works. And you know, I think it's brave, actually. You know, here we are, involved in saving wildlife and advocating for wolves, and yet I think a lot of us if we had to witness something that was occurring in nature, that happens in nature, it's very hard to watch, and so it's a very interesting. I find it just a brave thing that you guys do out there.
Before the next question, I have a question for you, and I think this is probably what a lot of people want to know. I'm watching some of those scenes, and there are blizzards. It is cold.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seriously. I mean, first of all, how many hours do you stand out there? And I guess the important question is, how do you keep your feet warm? Because it's
yeah. I do go out almost every day, whether it's winter, summer, or whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing you have to realize is that most of the time I'm filming out of a car. That is, I'm driving, I'm locating the animals. It's not like what most people think of pure wildlife, where you're out, 100 miles from the nearest road. So that's a factor. That is, I have a car that I can go to, warm up. And also, I'm giving away all my secrets here. But you've been to Yellowstone. You know what it's like to see. And I'm just part of the tourists. They're the visitors. I'm out there with them. The fact that we can see such incredible behavior from the road is a real tribute to Yellowstone, and the fact that we don't have we have an area that's being preserved and protected. It's a privilege, actually.
Okay, you have another question there?
I do. Denise Hewitt asks, with wolves back in Yellowstone, do you see more or fewer coyotes? I ask because I wonder if the coyotes are now forced to be closer to the roads versus in the woods, even though their numbers may be down.
Yeah, one of the problems I had, or we had, my partner and I had with doing this film, is that there's no coyote research going on in the park right now. For a while, for 15 years, there was a very intensive study, pre-wolf and post-wolf, which could answer a lot of the questions that we had at that time. But that study, I think, is over with. It was about 2005, I believe. So all my observations then are very anecdotal. That's what, like today I saw 6 coyotes on a carcass, which I think was a roadkill. It was right next to the road. So if that was my only sample, I would say coyotes' numbers are about the same as they've always been. But on the other hand, day after day, I see fewer and fewer coyotes over the years. In the Lamar Valley, there used to be, I think those researchers found that there was 10 coyote packs in a range of about 15 miles along the road. And those packs averaged around 7, 8 to 10 individuals, so they were fairly large coyote packs. But since the wolves have come back in, the packs are fewer and they're also much lower in numbers. I personally think that the bison population has increased so much, and they use the Lamar Valley so much in the summer, that there isn't a whole lot of forage for the animals in the winter. So we don't see many animals in the winter anymore in the Lamar Valley. But that affects the coyote in the following way, and that is the rodents that they depend upon have very little cover. It's just like a mowed lawn out there. And I think that maybe is the biggest reason why we don't have as many coyotes, not so much the wolves.
So Kathy Miller would like to know, what is the most species you've seen on one single kill at a time, or at a time, or one single kill site? So how many species have you seen at actually one single kill?
Okay, well, you count them. On the average kill, let's say it's in the time when the bears are out, as opposed to winter, we would have grizzlies that would come in. Usually they would take the carcass over from the wolves. Certainly there would be coyotes in the area. Ravens are always present. Quite often the ravens are there before the animal's even killed. Magpies, if it's in magpie areas, which usually means that there's must be trees nearby. Eagles, both golden and bald. And later on, of course, lots of bugs that would finally dispose of the animal with the, the last bits of it. The lion, for example, does not come down to the carcass very often. Oh, foxes. We would have red foxes. That would be about it. Yeah, that's pretty good. We'd always hope that a wolverine would come in, or one of these more exotic animals. Occasionally, very rarely, we would see a bobcat near a carcass. But that would be about it. Those are the ones that come to mind. So how many do we get to? Was anybody counting?
10.
About 10, I think. Yeah.
Counting.
You got another question?
So Debbie Hinchcliffe is asking, Bob, Jerry, and I in Fairwater, Wisconsin would like to know what you are working on now.
Well, every year I do a kind of a highlight film, which is as the title would suggest, just the highlights of the previous year. And I lecture that to various groups. Usually I start with an Audubon group in Billings, which is about 180 miles from here. But I didn't grow up in Billings, but I spent a lot of time in Billings as a teacher. And so I go back there and do that presentation. But what that does for me is it gives me a chance to study the footage that I've shot over the year and to see if that could be incorporated into a finished film, because these are by far not finished. So that would be the primary one that I'm working on, and I'm just finishing the sound effects on the program that I have to give next week. I don't have any finished films. My partner and I have talked about doing a raven film, possibly one about blacktail ponds, and maybe just a generic wildlife film about the park, but nothing formal, nothing that's paying any money anyway.
Do you do those those films that you're working on right now for the society? Do you do that annually, and is it available for the public to see in any way?
I do it annually, yes. This is the 2021. That's when I will lecture it mostly in the winter. But no, it's too rough to be distributed as a finished film. There's no music to it. My partner laughs at me because he's the one that does the fine editing. He kind of laughs at my ability to edit because editing is a real skill. Then you have to be able to match shots very carefully. And if I can't find the shot that matches, I just say the hell with it and go on and let the audience suffer more. But even now in Hollywood, this idea of what's called a jump cut, where you don't have continuity in your shots from one to the other, is becoming the norm. So maybe it'll seep into the wildlife films, and I won't have to worry about matching.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I mean, people are shooting in all different formats now, and they're jumping back and forth, and that's kind of like the modern way to do it. So
people also really like the rawness of that kind of stuff. You know,
with social media now, people are shooting on all kinds of stuff. So maybe it'll work out. I have a question here from Rhonda Dern, and she said, "Do wolves eat coyotes?"
They kill coyotes, but I've never seen one eat one. I've seen coyotes eat coyotes, but for some reason, wolves prefer elk, bison, and deer. So when they kill the coyote, it's mostly it's a territorial thing. It's a competition. Mm-hmm. It's not for food.
Yeah, they're not really known for eating other predators, right? Then that's one of the things that I find interesting in so many people think that still today that wolves will kill you and eat you, whereas my answer is always no. They don't kill competitive predators. They eat vegetarian ungulates, and so you really don't have anything to worry about. Maybe unless you're a vegan. But that would be really interesting. I guess, is it because coyotes are such scavengers, and in the film it even says they'll eat anything? Is that why, do you think? Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's like a lot of things. If we could just ask these animals some of these questions, we would find out in a hurry. But of course, we can't do that. We also would eliminate a lot of PhDs if we could talk to one of these animals for an afternoon.
We don't want to do that.
We try over but they don't answer.
No. So
secrets.
I don't know why. I'm sure if a wolf was hungry enough, it would eat a coyote. Our wolves are pretty well fed. They've got a lot of ungulates to feed on. But maybe it's interesting to note that even human hunters don't eat wolves. Unfortunately, they just well. So that's one thing we share in common with wolves. We don't.
Lily's had it over here. She's like, gross. That's just not acceptable.
So, is that all the questions?
We do have one comment, just a comment from Sheila Redmond, and she said that she would love to see a Raven film when you make it.
Yeah. So, Bob, before we wrap up, why don't you tell us where your film is available, like how, in case people want to buy it, and I'm guessing the guys on the Sedona end will put a link in the bio or in the website for you so that people can go and pick it up.
Well, thank you for asking. Yes, we have been selling DVDs of all our productions, and those kinds of sales have gone down with the lack of people going to streaming. So, but we did produce a couple, 300, I think, copies of the film, and it's available through my partner's website, which is Trailwood, one word, Trailwood Films .com. I had to stop and think of what it was, but trailwoodfilms.com is the website. And it's $20, the same price as all of our productions have been.
Trailwoodfilms.com. Okay, great. We do have one last question here from Gary how do you say his name again? Hoshiyama. And he said, Bob, you carry a spare camera when you venture out on a project. Is it the same as the primary camera?
No, I don't. Partly because I'm working out of my house on a daily basis, so that if my camera goes down, which seldom happens, I do have backups back here at the house. I do have specialized cameras like a GoPro if I need a specialized project that I carry, but as far as a replacement, no, I don't.
And Erica Kelly, one last question.
And Erica Kelly is actually, she was our very first volunteer when we started
Thank you
APEC.
for doing that.
And now she lives in North Carolina, so.
And she moved away and left us.
Yeah, she left us.
And her question is, what is your favorite animal to watch or film?
Well, it would have to be the wolf. It's got such an interesting life, and I certainly will share that with a lot of people because I've made, 7 wolf films now in the last 20 years, and 2 finished coyote films, 1 otter film, a bison film, and a bear film. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the general public is looking for and what I like. But any animal that's doing something of interest is filmable. I mean, this highlight lecture film that I've done has actually got very little wolf in it, not because I wouldn't put wolf in, but wolves are very difficult to get enough usable footage close enough. So it has got great gray owls, it's got trumpeter swans, grizzlies, some coyotes, a few otters, all thrown in. And so that's what it is. It's just a high interest film. If they're doing something that's entertaining, I film it.
Yeah, I think the raven film is probably going to be pretty interesting. I've seen a couple of small documentaries on ravens. They're so intelligent that I'm sure they have a interesting life that is worth filming and worth talking about. So I'm really excited to see that.
Yeah.
We look forward to that. But I'm going to wrap it up and say thank you, Bob. We're obviously big fans of yours. We're so excited to do this interview. And oh, by the way, everybody, this is Bob's first Zoom.
Yes.
So we've Zoomed a couple this week to practice, but he's never done this before. It's really exciting, and we really appreciate you being here at Sedona Wolf Week and sharing your film with us. We're really excited, and hopefully we'll see you next year. Maybe you won't have your raven film yet, but we'll talk.
Yeah.
And great seeing you, Bob. Thank you so much.
It's really great to see you, and hopefully we get to see you in person soon. You're one of my favorite people, Bob.
Well, thank you, and it's been a joy. I wish I was in Sedona. I really enjoyed the theater there and showing the films in front of an audience, which is one reason why I like to do those little lecture films, that you get input back from people that are watching, immediate input, which is really nice.
It is really.
Thank you.
Next year, hopefully we'll be able to do it again.
Yes.
We'll all be there.
Pandemic.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody,
Thank you.
for watching tonight. Thank you, Bob. And you guys in Sedona, you want to take it away?
Certainly, we're going to go live with some wrap up the day, and Apex, we'll see you in the morning. Good night, everybody.
Hey,
Take care, guys.
Night.
Bye.
Bye.